nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let's pray. Almighty God, as we get together today, we thank you for all the folks here in this building and all the people, students and staff across the county, and all the parents and guardians that support them. We ask that you would bless all of them, and tonight we ask that you would bless us, not just for tonight, but through the Christmas season and into the new year with safety and success. We ask that you would also bless our meeting tonight and bless us with wisdom and discretion. Amen. We didn't have anybody sign up for public comment, so we moved down to student and staff recognition.
Okay, and this is twofold because we're going to recognize the top scoring students in each grade and each subject area for last year's general summative assessment. And of course this shows that the dedication and the hard work of the teachers as well. So for third grade English Language Arts, Mason Mowry, Maddie Nazarod, and Nathaniel Vinsel. Third grade math, Nathaniel Vinsel, Mason Mowry, and Emmett Sisson. For fourth grade English Language Arts, Dallas Hull, Sonny Milstead, and Cicely Flanagan. Fourth grade math, Sonny Milstead, Cicely Flanagan, Dallas Hull, and Grayson Gilbert. For fifth grade English Language Arts, Bella Kimball, Connor Raines, and Harper Dempsey. Fifth grade math, Bella Kimball, Gracelyn Mongold, and Harper Dempsey. And fifth grade science, Bella Kimball, Harper Dempsey, Connor Raines, Gracelyn Mongold, and Bristol Bowers. Great job for all these students.
Congratulations to all of them. That concludes staff recognition.
Yes.
So then we move down to the minutes of the December 2nd board meeting. We each received a copy of the minutes. Are there any corrections or objections to the minutes that we received, or do we have a motion to accept them as is?
So moved.
We have a motion to accept them. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any comment, any discussion? And all in favor of approving the minutes of the December 2nd board meeting, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And opposed, no. Motion passes. And with that, we'll move to personnel.
Perfect.
Nothing.
We don't have any for the first one.
No resignation?
No resignations or retirements.
Nope.
Awesome.
Employment, we have Billy Beechler, extracurricular boys assistant basketball coach at Pendleton County Middle School. Janice Hebner, extracurricular girls assistant basketball coach at Pendleton County Middle School. Thomas Craig, softball assistant coach at Pendleton County Middle School. Christine Lambert, extracurricular before and after school reading and math tutor at Brandywine Elementary School. Rachel Mitchell, extracurricular before and after school reading and math tutor at Franklin Elementary School. Lindsay Heckford, restricted substitute teacher. Judy Mullins for substitute aide. Judy Mullins for substitute cook. Cheryl Hebner for substitute custodian. And Lindsay Heckford for extracurricular occupational therapy facilitator.
You have my recommendation to approve the personnel as presented.
Our superintendent's recommending employing the personnel as presented. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion or any questions? Then all in favor of approving the personnel as presented, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And opposed, no. Motion passes. Nothing under approval of contracts. Approval of non-paid coaches.
Daniel Miller.
And you have my recommendation to approve Daniel Miller as a volunteer coach.
We have our superintendent's recommendation to approve Daniel Miller as a non-paid coach. Do we have a motion?
Second.
Second.
Whatever. Put one of us down. Mere Katie.
Also, both of you spoke to.
Just
who did
Betty.
it first?
Betty,
Betty.
and then Sonny.
Sonny seconded. So, do we have any comments, any discussion about this non-paid coach?
And I think it's more specifically for videography.
Yes, he's going to be
Just to
videoing the
clarify.
games, and he will get videos from other schools for our coaches to watch.
Okay. Any additional discussion, clarifications? Then all in favor of approving Daniel Miller as a non-paid coach, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And opposed, no. Motion passes. Volunteers, chaperones.
Brandywine Elementary School, Caitlin Shiflett as a volunteer, and Caitlin Shiflett as a chaperone for Brandywine Elementary School, and Franklin Elementary School volunteer, Deborah Hutchison.
And you have my recommendation to approve the volunteers and chaperones as presented.
Our superintendent's recommending that we approve the volunteers and chaperones as presented. Do we have a motion? We have a motion. Do we have a second? We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Any questions? Then all in favor of approving the volunteers and chaperones as presented, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And opposed, no. Motion passes, and with nothing under leaves of absence, I believe you're done. So we're done with personnel. And now we would move over to finance.
All right, so under Finance 6, we will start with 6A, Treasurer's Report for November of 2025. We did report last month that we had a large cash fund balance and that we would soon start declining this time of the year, and we surely are in November. Nothing alarming, but it is seeing a decline. So we had $4,113,511.60 at the end of October. $870,000 in receipts as tax collections are much smaller. State aid's not picked up, and not as many federal reimbursements. Disbursements of $1,242,126. So almost, $400,000 more disbursements than receipts. So a fund balance of $3,741,459.63 divided up among the accounts that we have and get a subtotal. And then payroll had some outstanding checks, so that was temporarily a negative, but that was come back as we do a sweep for payroll. So again, $3,741,459.63. Interest earned for the month dipped below 4% for the first time in quite a while, 3.91%. But with a larger cash fund balance during the first half of the month, we still had over $12,000 in interest. Since July 1st, over $53,000 interest, $53,845.38. The bills that were approved at the last meeting tie back into the gross payroll, which was over $853,000, and then tying that back to the net takes us back to the front of ending fund balance, $3,741,459.63. It is about $150,000 ahead of where we were a year ago at this time as far as cash flow. So again, doesn't always equal ending fund balance, but cash flow is still positive compared to a year ago.
You have my recommendation to approve the treasurer's report for November 2025 as presented.
Your superintendent's recommending that we approve the treasurer's report as presented. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second. We
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion or any questions? Then all in favor of approving the end of November fund balance with the $3,741,459.63 balance, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And opposed, no. Motion passes. The treasurer's report is approved.
All right, 6B is a lease agreement and resolution. So it is for a 2026 bus that we will be purchasing. I don't know if Christy, if it has it arrived yet? Or should
No,
be soon?
it's, once we finish this, we'll
Okay.
schedule a date.
All right, so it should be coming in, but we are going to lease purchase it again over 4 years. And so that gives us, again, increased bus replacement funding beginning next year. And by the time we pay the interest over the 4 years, we will have gained a bit more on bus replacement. So it's basically no cost to us to pay for it over 4 years versus 1. So we continue to do that. Again, I don't know if we will do that indefinitely, how much debt we want to take on, but it works for us financially and eases the burden in any specific fiscal year to buy a bus. So it's a 4-year term to purchase this bus that's on here, and I don't know if you have any other questions or not. You remember the size, passenger size on that one?
Don't.
No. But at any rate, this is for a new bus that will be arriving shortly, and this is for a lease purchase of that.
You have my recommendation to approve the lease purchase agreement as presented.
Superintendent's recommending that we approve this lease purchase agreement as presented. Do we have a motion?
So moved. Oh, second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion or any questions? Then all in favor of approving the lease with Country Roads Leasing through for the amount of $144,660 for 4 years at 5.75%, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And opposed, no. Motion passes. The lease is approved.
All right. The next item on the agenda is budget revisions. So we do have several that kind of came through here at one time under budget revisions for 6C. So I'm going to pull these up here. So we have some supplements and transfers. Supplements are adding, or in a couple of cases subtracting from the budget. Transfers are from one line item to another. Starting with the supplements, which are number 105 to 112. They total 123,023.24. A grant for $11,576 for early literacy. That has gone in the past to go for Dolly Parton Imagination Station library books. It also goes to pay for part of our software that's used in some of our learning programs, $11,576. And then the vocational program, where Ron Hudson oversees it with Janice and with the business department. So we get a large state grant of just $58,041. Bethany Wetzel is the business person. Vocational, $8,138, and then so two state grants, and then a federal of $51.69. Ron divides those up based upon contact hours and a formula between the three categories of ag, consumer homemaking, and business. But the three grants are $58,041, $81.38, and $51.69. The next grant, 107, Child Nutrition Backpack Grant. That's worked through the Child Nutrition Department. That is sent out to the various schools and divided up. So 64, 72, 81. Then we have some of our federal grants that were into the budget with an estimated amount in the spring, but they don't always come in at the exact same amount when we get final numbers. Good news is for special ed, IDEA increased by 10,234. So we're adding some of those costs into IDEA federal special ed, 10,234. We'll see transfers here in a minute. State special ed, on the other hand, a smaller pot of money decreased by 5,461 for state special education. That's a decrease. Federal pre-K, which is just about 18 to 20,000 total, it decreased 213, so we're removing that from the budget. The next budget supplement 111 is a 431.43, working with Janice again, Educators Rising program, to buy some supplies for that. It's 431.43. Guidepost graduation, which Carrie works with Dolly at Rex Road, and been a successful program for us, but it's a year-by-year grant. You know, we have to apply for it, make sure we get it. $28,635. So the total, the net of the increases and decreases and these budget supplements is $123,023.24 on those items. Now going to budget transfers, continuing in the same PDF. The first budget transfer, 303, is where we go from federal special ed from reserve to actual. So we did the estimate, then we increased it by 10,000, but the original estimate goes from reserve to actual. We have some regular special ed salaries and benefits there on that. Mainly our classroom aides are paid out of the federal special education. We'll talk about that in a little bit later in our funding formula discussion. A lot of our aides are paid out of that, and then the various regular special ed, any autism, pre-K, some administrative, pays for a portion of central office expenses, but only a portion of that for special ed program. So that 270,032.54 is going from reserve over to the actual line item. So we just increased it by just over 10,000 in the prior supplement. The next one, 304, state special ed from reserve to actual. These are estimated at the beginning in spring, Then the state has to approve them, get their final approval in the fall, which is why it's like a 6 or 8 month process until we're getting these into the actual budget here. This is state special ed, going from reserve to line items like stipends, when there's IEP eligibility meetings, when there's trainings, when there's substitutes needed, those sorts of things that take place, some supplies for the various personnel that work in special education. And that totals $51,475 transfer for 304. 305, federal special ed preschool. We've always received around 18 to 20,000. It's not a large grant. It does pay for part of the special ed preschool program that we have. This year pays for part of an aide's salary, so $18,979. So 303 to 305 total transfers from reserve to actual, 340, 486, 54. 340, 486, 54. And again, you have your supplements going back up to the ones that we did earlier of 123, 023, 24.
You have my recommendation to approve the budget revisions as presented.
Our superintendent's recommending that we approve the budget revisions as presented. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion or any questions? Then all in favor of approving budget supplements 105 through 112 in the amount of 123,023.24 and transfers number 303 to 305 in the amount of 340, 486.54, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And opposed, no. Motion passes. The revisions are approved.
Okay, so now we go to financial update. Try to highlight a couple items here. So try not to stay too long. I've already been warned. So 1,400 calculate. We haven't got the policy yet, though. All right, so we've got a ways to go. 1,400 floor calculation. You can look at this. I will go over it in brief detail. The 1,400 floor calculation. It's a little bit complicated, but once you take a look at it, it makes a little bit more sense. So everything is tied for all the below 1,400 counties to Pocahontas County. And that came up with in 2008, and then we got to add 10% more, and it's worked pretty well over the years. But anyway, Pocahontas has the fewest students per square mile. So, okay, Pocahontas enrollment has gone from 918 to 848. Their square mile stays at 940. Their students per square mile, they have less than 1 student per square mile. We have just over 1 student per square mile. So for Pendleton, we compare at 1.23 per square mile to 0.97, and now we're at 1.2 to 0.9. So that gap between these two, so we were 79% as densely populated as Pocahontas, and now we're 73%. Okay, so Pocahontas has become more sparse than Pendleton. So you take the actual enrollment for this year, for example, we have 848.95. We have actual students, some are FTE, partial. You get to add the charter school in for a calculation. They're pulled out later for funding. So the official enrollment for funding, 848.95. We would need 551 to get us to 1,400. If you multiply that by our ratio compared to Pocahontas is 73.95%. Last year it was 78. That lets us add 407, gets us to 1,256. Well, that's a far ways off from 1,400. The legislature did allow in 2019, let us add 10% more, 125. So now we're at 1,382. That's the first year since 2019-2020 that we will be below 1,400 students in the calculation, because the multiplier of what we need to get to 1,400 is 73% versus the 78%, because we're not, Pocahontas is more sparse than us, and our ratio has dropped to 73.95%. You could never go above 1,400, so we were capped. So what does it mean being funded at 1,382? Well, we're below 17.92 students. So roughly 829608 is our allocation in the formula for every student. And so that's a potential negative impact of 148,722.39. So 150 was the ballpark figure, 148,722.39. Now to put it in perspective, if last year, the current year we're in now, last year's budget for this year, we were given 11,614,000, state and local combined, based upon 1,400 students. If we had received for 849, which was our enrollment last year officially, that would be a difference of 4.5, almost 4.6 million. So we're still getting a lot of money compared to what we would be if we were funded at 849 students, but we are starting to see for the first time falling below the 1,400. So our goal would be a couple things. You know, can we get the 10% raise to say 15%? Not sure if that can happen. Or there's a proposal by school administrators now, can we get more personnel allowed per 1,000 and maybe get more funding that way as far as personnel goes, and which means funding. And so that may happen, may or may not happen. So in the meantime, we know for sure we're going to get 150,000 less than we would have gotten under the 1,400 floor. So it's not a time for panic, but it is, time to take that into consideration, as we've talked about. And we know this might be coming for a while. We've talked about the CIS at a prior board meeting. That funding's going away. So it just adds to our discussion as we look at our current fund balance and those sorts of things. So about 150,000 short. Obviously, this is not ideal. It is still allows us to maintain our system, pretty consistently. We may have to think about, are there any actions that we need to take to be a little bit proactive? And we're not to that point of making final decisions yet. But if we had this every year and got 150,000, let's say Pocahontas dropped even further, and then we're getting funded for 14 or 1,360 versus 1,382. And if it didn't get, it's still a lot of money, but it's not where we're used to getting. So we would have to make adjustments based on that. So that's the 1,400 floor calculation. All this hasn't been converted into money yet for FY27. Within the next few weeks, the State Department will send out the money figures, and then we'll start talking about revenues and expenses for FY27 based on that's just basic information. The 1,400 floor, we are comparing every below 1,400 county compares their students per square mile to Pocahontas, and then that ratio is what you multiply, percentage, what you multiply by the amount needed to get to 1,400 is how you get your extra funding for that. So we got a pleasant surprise in 2019 when the 10% extra was allowed, and that really bumped us up a lot along with COVID money. And so that's still there, but it's not quite enough to keep us at the 1,400 level. So any questions on that? That's the 1,400 floor calculation. It's been there. I don't see it going anywhere. We've certainly emphasized, I know Nicole has emphasized the importance of keeping that in place. So I'm going to go to the next one, to preliminary comps of 27 under 6D. Try to take this pretty quickly. Okay, so the numbers that we get, 843 students, and Lisa works with the enrollment and carry with attendance. 3.05 reduction FTE, part-time, homeschool, not sure what all, gets us to 839.95. 9 charter school students reside in Pendleton County. Where they go to charter school, I don't know, but they're virtual or wherever. That gets us up to 848.95. That's the number we just used in the calculation. And we're adding 533 students. Some people say ghost, I just say a base, to get us to 1382.10. And that's the 1382 approximate number that we're going to be funded for. So these numbers from the state have been corroborated, so the 1382 is where we're going to be, give or take a little bit of fraction based on that. We don't have comparisons of all the counties, but I'm sure a lot of counties have decreased. I think next month we'll have some comparisons of enrollment by county. The next page of preliminary comps. Well, how does that equate to professional staff? So we have professional staff, and this is only professional staff eligible to be funded. Positions like my position or child nutrition or some technology positions, they're not even in the funding formula. But 88.7 we have hired. We're allowed 100.55. We employ under the formula, which is how we survive. We get the money whether we employ the people or not. That's how we balance the budget, keep all of our schools open, and do that. And years ago, maybe 8 or 10, you had to hire the people to get the money, and then we convinced them, it's like, well, give us the money, and then we'll figure out what to do with it, which makes a lot more sense. If we had to hire 12 more people just to get the money, It wouldn't help us. We'd grab a bunch of people, but we couldn't pay the bills. So 100.55. Vocational school, South Branch takes 1.37. You look at our population going to South Branch vocational. And there's a little bit of charter school adjustment for those 9 students are counted and then subtracted out. So we have 88.7 employed, are funded for 98.52. So we are to the good under the formula 9.82. Most every county on that chart is in parentheses, meaning they're over the formula. Some of these budget issues you read about in Roan and Randolph and Barber and Hancock, most of them are over the formula with these parentheses. They employ more than they're funded for. Well, 80% have excess levies, and that's the largest part the way they do it, and some are in financial trouble. And there's only a handful of us under. Pocahontas is under the 1,400 floor, a couple other 1,400 floors like Webster. So we underemploy, but getting that money allows us to keep things, keep operating and keep going. So we're under 9.82 on professional. On service personnel, we employ 70.8. Now that number has gone up a lot in the last 3 to 4 years. It used to be in the 50s. Of course, the Third Grade Success Act, we have hired 4 aides across the county in the last several years. So it used to be 58 or so, now it's 70.8. But we're allowed funding for 76.7. The state has raised the funding. 0.422 is taken away to account for our share of South Branch service personnel. So the more personnel that South Branch employs, even if it's fractional, the more that we don't always write them a check. Now some employment arrangements is agreed that way, but if it's a regular employee, it reduces our funding here pro rata based upon our enrollment and our share at South Branch. A little bit of factor taken away for charter schools. So in the end, we're funded for 75.79. We employ 70.8, so we're under the formula 4.98. We are one of the only counties in the state under the formula on service. I think Gilmore, another small county, because service is even harder to be under the formula because of all the bus drivers and aides and buildings that you have. So again, we are among a handful of counties under in service, in professional, and literally, less than 5 or so are under on both. Again, that's how we maintain our system and maintain our schools. We get funding for 1,400 students, but we only have 840 some, and that's how we pay the bills in large part. I'm going to stroll down a couple pages. The next most important item here is professional instructional. So the state years ago, page 5 of the PDF, the state years ago said, well, if you employ professionals, we don't want you to load up on administrators. We're going to make you 91% of your professionals have to be professional instructional. So if you want to hire more people, that's fine, but 91% have to be professional instructional. So it's always been a struggle for small counties when you need to have a superintendent and a principal and other directors doing things. You just have to have those, no matter how big or small. So for Pendleton, 81.7 is what we have. We're required to have 80.78, so we're just to the good 1. So we're 1 to the good. But every time we talk about hiring a position, I have to have the discussion. Well, is this a professional instructional, or is this a position that doesn't make us go past this ratio? And some certain directors are not funded at all, which means that, so if you're not funded at all, you don't appear in these calculations. But if you're funded and you're not instructional, it counts in this calculation. So we've been as close as 0.29 a couple of years. Some counties actually go over and don't have enough. So Hardy this year is being penalized 1.49. They missed their ratio by 1.49. Upshur 2.19. Webster 0.94. So it doesn't happen often, but if you are below your professional instructional requirement, you will be penalized. And so if it says you're penalized 2 positions, you'll lose money for the equivalent of 2 positions, which would be well over $100,000 in that scenario. And so then there's just a summary of those. I'm not going to hit the summary. It just summarizes those ones that we've talked about. The nurses and counselors is page 6. Nurses and counselors, we had 7 on this one, depending on the CIS counselor position at the high school, how we count that, and we're funded for 6.91, so we're over a fraction there, but that's just nurses and counselors, step 5. So the bottom line is that we are under the formula. In most every county that goes to those meetings, like out in Stonewall in November, they're talking about being over the formula and all that, and they have to either find a way to do it. And Hancock now has had a grenade golf, basically. Roane has a bad situation. Hancock is going from a $5 million surplus to a $2 million deficit, expected to be $6 or $7 million deficit, and they missed the mark somewhere in their planning, and so they're struggling big time up in Hancock County on that one. So this is the funding formula without too many extra details, but basically it shows you how the numbers add up, how the 1,400 enrollment, or close to it in this case, contributes to our funding for the funding formula. So obviously it's critical, it's beyond critical for us to maintain the 1,400 floor and improve it if possible, but certainly maintain it. Secure rural schools, 6D for the next one. So the good news is secure rural schools, forest land funds finally passed after it seems like a year. So we will get some extra money, what we didn't get last year. We will get some extra money this year, and it's funded for FY27. How much will it be in our budget this year? Well, we used to get about $100,000 a year. We get about $70,000 now, but they'll give us probably $50,000 for last year, $50,000 additional for this year. So we'll be to the good, $50,000 or $60,000 this year, and should be fully funded for next year. But already we're in next year's budget, and this thing only goes to next year, even though it's a 3-year author, because you go back a year, current year. But it's better than not having it. And so why do we get less than what we used to get? Well, we didn't know this until a couple years ago when our money went down. There's a factor based upon per capita income, per capita personal income. Pendleton went from $40,000 in 2020 to $50,000 in 21. And I don't know what the makeup, it could be a small number of people in a small county, whether there's any payments from COVID or I don't really know, or anything like that, or the pandemic. 2022 went to $54,000, and so we saw our forest land money reduced by almost 30%. It's at $52,000 for 2023, and that's going to be our payment for last year based on this number. What is it for 24 and 25? Well, one of these offices is closed now. That somebody else is doing this calculation, but one of these offices is now gone, I think. But I think they're still doing it somewhere. So I don't know is the answer, but I expect that when we were at 40 and now we're up in the 50s, that it's going to impact our payments. So where we used to get over 100,000, we now get around 70 to 80. And so this is the forest land chart since 07. It was 123, 196, 100, almost every year over 100. One year there was sequestration, 16, 17, only got 20. Over 100, the majority of the last 15 years, then 84 and 77, 26 last year, which will give us about 50 to bring us up. Will give us 70 some this year and 70 some next year. But the days of being over 100,000 are probably gone, at least for now, unless our per capita income decreases or anything like that. So good news is it's reauthorized, or we'd be stuck at the 26,000 level instead of getting 70,000. So that's good news. It's not as good as what it would have been getting 100,000 a year, but it's better than what we're. So I budgeted 50,000. I was optimistic because every year it gets redone. It might be a time that it doesn't. I put 50,000 in the budget. We're going to receive about 100,000 for this year, so that's a 50,000 to the good, because they'll give us last year's and this year's calculation based on that. So a little lengthy, but I wanted you as board members to kind of see where we were with that. So there's reason for caution. There's not reason for panic, but there's reason for discussion as we go forward. Any questions for me?
Any questions for JP? Thank you, JP.
Yep.
I think that finishes us up under finance, and we now move to facilities.
Okay. So, The North Fork Elementary gym was having a heating problem, which this is not the weather that we want to have that. I do know Josh Owens was there today, so hopefully they got that up and working because they had a concert in there this evening. So hopefully they did not have a cold winter concert, but just a winter concert. So, but I do think that's up and going now. Unfortunately, we did hear back from the school building authority and we did not win the grant. We were right under the line, so we missed the cutoff by 1 point. So that's discouraging but encouraging to me because it was a very, very good learning experience and we had a lot of guidance. And the recommendation was to look at the MIP, which would be due in March. So as soon as we get done with all of our celebrating holidays, that's what we have to look forward to, is some discussions about decision making about where we want to go. The MIP grants, if we would be able to win one of those, it's a maximum of $1 million. So our county, our county share would be significantly more, probably double of what we were recommending from the needs grant. So that's just where we're at, and so we'll have updates in January for you, I'm sure.
But by us finishing just one under the line, does that give us any credibility next year to be higher up?
I hope so. I would hope so. I mean, they said they just, they were very apologetic, and they said you were so close, and I really, really, really appreciated that they called me Friday and said don't travel because of the weather that we had on Monday. That would have been, it was very cold yesterday, and we would have been driving into very bad weather. So they were very, very kind to us and very considerate, and I really do appreciate that. Any other comments on that, JP?
No, I think that's exactly right. It was disappointing not to get it, but, the SBA, I think, tried to do everything they could to get as many counties as possible, and we just fell 1 point short. I think if you had 50 points and above, you got money. We were at 49 in their calculation system, whatever it is, so we were right 1 point away, and they did tell Nicole to reapply with the MIP, which we'll have to be strategic about, because that money isn't as great. To which project do you apply for, and how do you go about it? And let's say they give us $1 million and the project costs $1.4 million, which some of these would have. Well, we were going to put $150,000 if they gave us the money, but they didn't. And so then at $400,000, if you do HVAC at Brandywine, which it's needed, it's 16 years old. You can lease purchase HVAC if you want to, or you can write a check for $500,000 if you want to. If you do roofing, you can't lease purchase roofing. So again, you can't indefinitely do everything lease purchasing, but that's the kind of example. If you have to come up with some money, and that's the only way you can get it, you have to think about what our options are for that sort of thing. So we'll be strategizing over that.
And right from the beginning, they told us they had less funds and more applications. So with that in mind, I do think that they were very gracious to us. So I appreciate it.
Any updates on the school out at Huffman Flats out there?
I have not stopped in this weather. We've driven by it a couple different times,
JD
but
stopped there today.
did you?
I did stop the
Did
other
you?
day, and it's got problems underneath of it.
Okay.
So there's floors sagging and corners dropping,
Okay.
and there's a hole in the roof. And I didn't try to look. There's steps to go up to the locked door are gone. I didn't
Oh.
try to look into it, but I have no interest in the Pendleton County Board of Education doing anything with it ourselves.
Okay. All right.
We have to put it up for bids then if we want to get rid of it. If no other, like the Historical Society doesn't want it.
Yeah, we'd have to review our options to make sure we did it, correctly. But basically, it is a building that we own, and if nobody wanted it or we couldn't give it to a qualifying institution, yeah, we'd have to put it up for bid. And I guess if nobody bid, we either leave it alone or pay somebody to take it away. I don't know which, or just leave it there. Obviously, leave it there, I guess, if nobody wants it. But there may be some interest, but again, what they're willing to do, what kind of resources they have, I don't know with those trails. We'll just have to take one thing at a time on that.
Did you say there's things in it?
I don't think so. I think that Charles has indicated that when it was last used, it was used for storage, but I think since then it's been emptied out. So I think it's pretty barren. So except for the critters.
Is there anything else under facilities? Any questions? Then we'll say that that's completed and there's nothing under old business, so we move to new business and MOU with educational consulting teams.
That is an opportunity for Pendleton County Schools to partner with the educational consulting teams to apply for a grant where we can take a team of math teachers and we can meet with other math teachers across the state and in our surrounding counties to look at data analysis and improve our instruction to help assist increasing math scores on our state assessments. They have outlined the budget for you in the agreement where you can see how much the projection of the cost is for this program. The grant will cover most of it. The district share is $7,250. It is a good opportunity, I think, for Pendleton County Schools to partner with us if we have received the grant and if we get it.
So you have my recommendation to approve the MOU with educational consulting teams as presented.
Our superintendent's recommending that we approve this MOU. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion or any questions?
Is that then a guarantee that we get this program?
No, I mean, if we apply for
We
it,
apply for it.
we have to apply for it.
It's the grant that the legislature passed last year, 5405. I was the person who gave out the grants, so I
So
wanted
now
to
you
apply
want
for
one.
one.
Oh, okay.
Any additional questions or comments? Then all those who are in favor of approving this memorandum of understanding with the educational consulting teams, please signify by saying aye. And opposed, no. Motion passes. It is approved. Policy revisions.
So I'm just gonna go over the summaries. And you guys can do what you want to as far as
Giving
reading.
us homework, huh?
Okay, so I did give them to you in printed copies, so you can have them.
Which is over an inch thick, I will point
Yeah.
out.
Yeah, I mean, if the state didn't make changes, we wouldn't have all these policies. So they're also on the board doc site under policies, under draft. If you want to go and look online, you can, under board docs and under policies, draft, and then for review. But in lieu of that, so there's a couple bylaws about you as board members, orientation and getting the hours updated there. The first couple are bylaws. I'm just reading like the first 3 or 4 pages you have is the summary. A little bit of language from the company, and then there's the summary of the like page 4. Okay, so there's several places it talks about weapons. And there's several places, 4 policies basically the same. Basically air rifles and rimfire rifles, if you've got a school shooting team that now allows to have those air rifles, that's going to be in policy if you have that. Class size, policy 2312 is being looking at as far as the assigning a full-time interventionist and where you can do that to grade 2 and 3 classrooms in lieu of ECATs. A ratio for guidance, which we exceed. This would have set a minimum. Guidance, 2 counselors for every 1,000 students. Well, we have 4 schools and 4 counselors, but some counties may have been skipping on counselors, I don't know. So they want at least a minimum, which we exceed, and then also has different ratios if you want it for elementary and high schools. 2451 is pretty large on alternative school programs, some of the behavior requirements and transition plans for elementary and even secondary alternative school programs, 2451. 2605 just puts in policy the legislative auditor can come and do audits, let alone the Department of Ed can do them, financial audits, State Department, but now the legislature can come and audit. If they don't like what we're doing, they can come and audit us also. So that puts that was passed last year. Student assessment benchmarks, it puts those parameters in place which we follow. Professional personnel allows for troops to teachers to be included in policy. Critical need for substitutes, we passed a couple meetings ago. It's included in this packet. It's the same as before. Mandatory staff trainings for IEP. So for IEP programs, there's mandatory staff training that's in policy passed by the state. Service personnel, cooks and custodians no longer have to have a high school diploma. That was passed last year. Food service personnel is just saying the same thing, don't have to have a high school diploma. Substitute bus operators, you can have a critical need for, if you have trouble, some counties do, getting bus operators, you can have a critical, you can have a substitute work more than the allowed days as a sub, a retired sub, if they want to do that. Drug and alcohol testing of CDL license holders updates those requirements. Open enrollment for non-resident students, just a technical correction with nothing really changed. Attendance, Carrie's looked over this, looked at excused absences, some of those changes in there, 5,200. Use of medications, 5,330. Access to a minor's medical records, who can access them, who cannot access them. That was passed in legislation last year. Care of students with chronic health conditions, access to records. 5,340, student accidents, cardiac arrest, making sure you have a cardiac plan for your students. It includes even sports league teams. It doesn't, so the elementary youth basketball programs that we have, for example, you know, it has some requirements for them to be able to have implemented these cardiac arrest plans and procedures. Suicide prevention, a small grammatical change. Graduation requirements expanded for a couple changes there to the computer science. It talks about that. A couple other small changes to 5460. Student discipline, Senate Bill 199. Again, managing some discipline issues related to Senate Bill 199 and alternative learning centers we've talked about. 5722, it's just a grammatical error. Parents' Bill of Rights, that was passed in legislation last year, so this puts Parents' Bill of Rights into code, number 578001. 5840 defines the term gang and establishes penalties for those who are members of gangs. And it's a new policy, 5840. Student employment eliminates the need for students age 14 or 15 to obtain a work permit, passed in legislation. A technical correction, fund to county restrooms and change it 7421. This is new policy, which requires public schools, and so it talks about provisions, male, female, the whole restroom issue there with that. It reflects the provisions of current law must be implemented in order to comply with state statute, 7421. Inventories, technical, artificial intelligence, we dealt with that some last time. This is just like a basic AI policy. We have several already under technology. It probably will evolve over time, so pretty much what they've recommended for our artificial, which we reviewed. Student records, who can have access to medical records, again, several times in here. Confidentiality, who has access to medical records. School safety, a couple things about the mapping. The mapping requirements, Travis will come back. We'll get this mapping off the ground here very soon. Talks about school mapping being required. School security personnel, and if you do hire school security officers, whether through a grant or yourself, certain provisions about what they can and cannot do if you have school security officers. 8500, getting the dye out of school. So that talks about getting the food, the colored dye out of there. We are to replace Wisconsin with West Virginia, so didn't have to worry about that for 8700. 8800 is updated to provide information about In God We Trust, 8800. And then administrative guidelines, we have not really adopted those. Someday we might get into those administrative guidelines, so we don't have those for approval tonight. That's like detail underneath policies if you want to go a layer deeper on your actual policy. So that's a listing of a lot of policies from Neola. Then scrolling down to, I'm going to go down towards the end, there's another summary. This was called the August update, which took a while to review. If I can get us back up here, there's a small update at the end, which is really very minor. So those are the bulk of the policies by far. And that was the so-called August update. Even though now it's December, it took us a while to get through all those policies and make sure everything correctly. This November update towards the end of the handout gets into a lot of apps and digital devices. And that's towards the very end for accessibility. The main thing about accessibility here and towards the very end, I think it's 8 of 8 at the bottom. There's 8 pages at the very end. You know, people are allowed access to websites and devices. If they have disabilities, we have to make sure our websites and whatever we're putting out is accessible for people with disability. This requires us by law to make sure that we have provisions. Christine Lambert would primarily work with that. Maybe IT persons, that if somebody has a hearing impairment or a vision impairment, but there's certain equipment that they use to access websites, we're supposed to employ the latest technology to make them accessible, you know, based upon all of the regulations and requirements. So it puts a lot of onus, you know, on us to look at that. And so it is an updated policy, but that we will do what we can and have so many days to make those changes for that. And that's what gets, that's at the very end of the handout, which is taking out some old language. And this is all new. This WCAG stands for something. It's about all, it's federal regulations that we are required to make sure that we have all this access that's out there. And so it's, you know, how many people actually call and say, hey, you know, we can't do such and such, I don't know. But this puts it in policy that we have to make sure we're compliant with all of that access. And so, but in a nutshell, that's all the policies. We'll come back later in January, once we get these approved, with some local policies that we want to update and make some. But these are basically all Neola, driven by legislature, driven by state board policy, driven by some clarification over the summer from some court rulings and things like that. So any questions for me? You'll have 2 weeks or so, or 3 weeks until our meeting in January, and then we'll come back for final approval on that.
Any questions for JP? So we recommend this as the first reading, or are you?
Yes, I do recommend this for the first reading, for approval as the first reading.
So
Policies.
our superintendent is recommending these policies that we have received tonight as a first reading, these amendments to the policies, as a first reading. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? And then all in favor of the approval of these policies as presented as a first reading, so it's not the final approval. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And opposed, no. Motion passes. They are approved as a first reading. And I think that finishes us up under new business, and we move down to other, and we have the 4th month attendance report.
I'm realizing as I go over this, I have a couple of typos on it. But not in the numbers. The numbers are all good. So, the 4th month went from the beginning of November until the beginning of December. So it did not include last week with all of the you know.
The winter break.
Our
The first winter break.
pre-winter break, yes. But leading up, you know, following Thanksgiving, leading up to Christmas, no, I apologize, following Halloween, leading up to Thanksgiving and Christmas. This is where we were standing. So Brandywine Elementary's kindergarten class ended with 97.22%, which is just phenomenal. The best individual school percentage was Brandywine Elementary. They were at 95, but you can take a look there. Franklin was also at 95. North Fork wasn't far behind at 94.75. So they're all kind of hovering about the same place as far as our elementary schools. Whenever I highlight the cells, it took me a minute with 3rd grade to figure out which it was, because they were all right there within the 95th percent. So 8th grade, Dr. Lambert was our best individual or best county grade level for the 4th month.
Awesome.
They were at 95.81. My typos there for 5th and 6th grade, the best percentage by grade was at North Fork instead of Franklin Elementary. I messed that up there, but I'll go in and fix it. But you can see as a county as a whole, we are at 94.40%. We usually do pretty well here. Whenever we come back from Christmas and the New Year, we start to see some sicknesses going around, and yeah, the flu, you know, different things tend to pick up. So it helps whenever we are in a solid place before that hit, so that we're not playing so much catch up trying to come back from it. But overall, very well for our 4th month attendance. Do you have any questions about it?
Thank you.
You're welcome. Anxious to get to the next one.
Okay, we'll move right ahead then.
So this is I have several documents here for chronic absence. Every 10 days, and I'll give a little disclaimer here, because we of course were closed several days last week, and Lisa went in and put them as closed days in the system, but yesterday was supposed to be our 80-day timeline. What she put in the system is not connecting yet, so I don't know if it's just kind of on a lag of updating, but this is telling us 80 days. I'll go back and adjust it again once our closed days hit, and it shifts our numbers a hair. But within the system, if we had not been closed, yesterday would have been day 80. You can see here on the 25-26, Brandywine Elementary's overall, this is average daily attendance rate. So on a regular day, average day, the number of students who are present. So day 80, Brandywine Elementary, over 95%, Franklin Elementary, over 95%, North Fork, over 95%. The middle high school isn't there, but they're at 94.11%, which I still think is really great. If you take a look, and the county as a whole, just below 95% as the county as a whole. You can kind of like cross over to see where it was last year. So last year at this time, Brandywine and Franklin were both above 95%, but everyone else was below. So we're seeing improvements in our average daily attendance rate. JP, if you go to the next one, the chronic absence. So same type of format this year compared to last year for, again, day 80 as of yesterday, but it's factoring in those closed days, which bumps us up a little bit. Brandywine Elementary was sitting at 9.4% for their chronic absence rate, which meets our standard at the end of the school year. Franklin Elementary, 8.94. North Fork, 7.29, phenomenal numbers. The middle high school, 15.73%. If you look at last year at this time for the middle high school, they were at 18.5%. So excellent job, you guys. The county as a whole, 11.87 compared to last year at 14. So we are moving in the right direction. These last two documents, it's the same numbers. You can go ahead and click on it, JP. It's the same numbers, but it compares over the last several years. So I just like to see how we are now compared to the last couple of years. And again, you can see on the average daily attendance rate, we are showing growth in every school for the last several sets of 10 days. So green is definitely good. And then for the chronic absence report over the last several years, same thing. Whenever you take a look at this, we have been in the green at every school for at least the last, since day 60. And Down at the bottom, there's a bar across the bottom that has like some red and yellow and blue. Those are our balanced scorecards numbers, so you know how we're measured at the end of the school year. So you can see last year, I'll click it on mine so I can actually read the number. Last year for Brandywine, they ended on the balanced scorecard with 9.38%. Right now they're at 9.4. And compared to this time last year, again, they were 14.7. So they're in great shape. Franklin Elementary ended at 9%. Right now they're at 8.9. This time last year they were at 11. North Fork is currently at 7.3%. They ended on the balanced scorecard with 13.95. Last year at this time they were over 12. The middle high school ended with our balanced scorecard at 21.7%, and right now they're at 15.7. And again, last year this time they were at 18. And then the county as a whole ended at 15.87, right now at 11.9. This time last year they were at 15. So we are really seeing the work that our schools are doing, and kids are in the building, which means they are available for instruction, which means we can teach them. We can't teach them if they're not here. So I was very cautiously excited because I understand it's throwing in a couple days there as 100% that aren't actually accurate, but those couple of days isn't gonna throw these way out of the ballpark of where they are now.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
You guys thought
Thank
I
you to
had
the
this.
schools.
Just putting you to shame, JP.
I know.
Any questions under the chronic absenteeism report? Then let's move to school improvement student achievement.
Okay, so I met last Monday by Teams with the Faculty Senate. That's my third meeting with them, the second one collectively, and then I met with them one time individually, and I'll meet with them at least one more time individually by the end of the school year. But they had shared with the non-traditional days as far as instruction, they made a specific request to have those staggered when we have long breaks. And that makes a lot of sense. So we have used 3, and they have really requested that we save one for January and possibly one for February, just assuming that we'll probably need them. I'm going to be optimistic and we'll say, well, we're going to save them just for January and we're only going to need one. But if we do need them, and so that's why you see the change in what I wrote in the article and the papers, that we were going to use them all first. I mean, we thought, several of us talked in the board office and thought that was the best approach, but when that request came from the Faculty Senate presidents, it made a lot of sense. So we're at 3 of 5, and I do believe 3 of our 5 days that we can use for accrued time if we have the accrued time accumulated. So we've been out 6 full days. So at this point, so anything else with school improvement?
No. I can add the Energy Express.
Yes.
Application has been submitted. Travis and I worked with Brooke, and that was submitted. So we should know mid-January if we're going to receive that for the summer.
Any questions under school improvement student achievement? Then we'll move to
I think
superintendent's.
that was a good idea to split up those packets the way you are. Just, they're home, they're wanting out anyway, and then you're boarding with more work. I mean, I just think it's good to give them a break.
Well, one teacher did say, it's going to get to the point where it's busy work and it's not effective.
Right.
And that's not what we want. So,
Right.
so then the teacher said, I need to see my students, and of course
Yeah.
we were trying to get them to see their students, but that helped.
Yeah.
So before we do another non-traditional packet, so.
Okay. So now we'll say we're finished up there, and we'll move to superintendent's update.
Okay, so I have given you some data, and JP has it as well. I have numbers for you for the results of the survey by category. Overall for the county, including all areas, so that's the 4 schools and the bus garage and the board office. So the areas that were high countywide was that, and I think this shows a lot to the work that's been done. We do get a little bit frustrated with some of our trainings and drills, but the highest is that they feel safe at work. All areas said that, so that's awesome. Schools foster a positive and inclusive environment for all students. Yeehaw. I think that's awesome. So that is great. And respected and valued by the colleagues. The low areas, staff morale, communication between admin and staff, and student behavior managed consistently. Those were the ones countywide that were low. The information that you have for the numbers gives you the overall average for each school by the questions, and that's provided to you. And then, and I do have to preface this, the summary that you have of comments was AI generated. So last week at the conference, I thought, well, what can I do with what data do I have that I don't have to worry about confidentiality? I put this in. I did not want to breach confidentiality because we did tell people who were participating in this survey that it would be confidential. So I feel like this is a good summary. It gives key themes, concerns, and then what they see as a need for professional development. It is a little AI apparent because in like one of the schools, the top concern and the positive highlights were the same things. So please read it with, you know, a filter, just knowing that it's been through a system of computer work to get to the summary. But I will tell you that took 5 minutes, and if I was trying to do that myself, it would have taken hours. So I think it's a good way to look at it. It's been provided to the principals, so they have an idea. Anyone's welcome to come and ask me more specific questions if they have any concerns. I do stress that it is a survey, and a survey is a great opportunity for 1 or 2 people to air their feelings that I wish would be taken care of, like we would go through a peacemaking procedures and deal with any issues that we have and try to fix them. But some people don't feel comfortable doing that, and those feelings always come out in the survey. So you'll see that there's going to be 1 person or 2 people that do affect the scores. I feel like overall, with the year of change that we've had, I think we're okay. So we have some specific areas that we need to work on, and I'm very thankful for everybody who participated. We had 90 people that participated in the survey, and it's good data. And we'll probably do it again next year, and hopefully we will see some improvement. So, any questions on the survey?
No, it was good to see how all of them rated high on feeling safe.
Yes.
Every school was above 4 on feeling safe.
I agree. That was very encouraging.
Any more questions, comments? Then I guess we move down to,
I have one more update.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. I was able to attend the Joint Standing Committee on Education on the 7th, Sunday the 7th, and the 5 superintendents that presented focused on flexibility, personnel, and school funding formula. So those are the areas that the superintendents are asking our representatives to look at with them and try to make some changes. So,
anything else?
not until conferences.
Okay, let's move to conference and meeting update then.
Okay, so I did let you know that I'll be out this week on Thursday and Friday. When we return for the holidays, January 5th, I am organizing a meet and greet from 2 to 4 p.m. with our delegates and our senators. I'll be sending that out. Hopefully we'll get some interest, and maybe we won't. But we did this a couple years ago. It was during Thanksgiving week. I'm a little concerned that maybe our window's too close, because the week after they are going to be in Charleston and starting up. So I'm going to send those invitations out tomorrow, and I'll let you know. Hopefully we will get some interest, and everybody would be welcome to attend that if that's available. And that's all.
That'd be at the board office, Nicole?
It will be at the board office, yes. 2 to 4.
2 to 4.
What day was it? Second?
It's the 5th. It's that Monday we have
January
that.
5th, yes.
And I will email you.
Okay.
Put it in so I don't Mess it up, okay. Okay, any questions or comments about the conference and meeting update? Then the next meeting that we have will be on January 6th, staff, not counting the meet and greet. We'll have it on January 6th, here, at the Board of Education office at 5:30. And I will accept the motion to adjourn.
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adjourn. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion passes and we are adjourned. Thank you, everybody. And Merry Christmas.
Yeah, Merry Christmas.